Well, thanks for signing up to see this presentation on 3 simple changes you need to make to your kid's batting practice routine if you want your kid to hit for more power. My name's Chet Womack. Going to be going very quickly today to give you a lot of good stuff. So this is a system that real quickly I started to use on my 8-year-old son. I've got a family of 5 that by the time he was 15 years old, allowed him to start to hit like this, where he goes down as a freshman. We're on a field that's 370 feet to center field. Leave. I can start to hit home runs on the big field. Also use this same system on my daughter, who's my second oldest, who didn't start out of the womb knowing how to hit very well, but looked a lot like this. And by the time she was 12, this is her first home run. She's going to head down. She's a 12U player. She's playing in a 14U tournament, and she is going to smoke this ball out of the field. And we're going to be talking today about how all of that was very, very specifically trained to happen. Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. Okay, now this is for people who are baseball or softball players or parents or coaches who know you need to hit the ball harder. It's for athletes who did not win the genetic lottery. We're going to be talking about how we're able to produce power out of small boppers, little kids who can hit a lot of tanks. And by maximizing their body. And we're going to be talking, this is for parents who know their kids need to move differently, but you don't know how to coach them to do it. You tell them to do things. They don't know how to do it. We're going to be talking about like stuff that helps them do that better, that almost nobody out there is talking about. So what we're going to be talking today is about something that I call power patterns. So there's a certain way that people who like Jose Altuve on the right can compete with an Aaron Judge on the left. When Jose Altuve is 5'6" and Aaron Judge is 6'7" or whatever they are, there's a big difference is the point. And both of them can hit over 30 home runs in a year at the major league level. Obviously, Aaron Judge hits more because he's bigger, but you can still be a power hitter if you know how to move in the right pattern. So I want to talk to you about what those patterns are, because that's the first step is you got to be able to identify what those patterns are. And so my goal for this presentation is that you're going to discover that the only way for you to actually hit and throw and move as fast and as powerful as possible is if you make your body move in the certain power patterns that the little guys use. And then you're going to work on discovering the secrets for how to retrain your athletes to actually move in these new, more explosive patterns, because that's really the key. You can know what it is, but if you don't know how to train your athlete to do it, it doesn't work. So this is something that I discovered back when I was a sophomore in high school. I answered an ad in the back of a Baseball Weekly magazine, and I sent in for a program that took me from a contact hitter who could only hit the ball as a sophomore in high school to the warning track to a guy who could hit the ball over 400 feet. It added 100 feet to how far I could hit the ball. This training system, this company is out of business, but I used it, got a ton of success. I ended up winning my high school MVP, the MVP for my whole high school league my senior year. And I eventually went on to play Division I college baseball, even though I'm only 5'10". So I just share this with you to be like, I would not have made this team, and I was no stud for this team, but I would not have made the University of California Irvine's team. This is me right here. They put the little guys in front as a small little white kid, because I didn't throw well, I didn't run well, I didn't play good outfield, but I could hit the ball really hard. And when you can do that, you get to have more opportunities. And so when I had kids, I'm like, well, I'm absolutely going to use the same systems that I used to help me hit hard enough to go play at the highest level possible for myself. And we've tweaked these things and really modified them to work even better than they did when I did it. That's what I want to share with you. So if you've been struggling to help your kid hit for more power, this is the stuff we're talking about today is probably absolutely why. Okay, so in this presentation, we're going to be talking about 3 secrets for this that you really need to make to the changes of your kid's training program if you want them to hit for more power. 1, we got to plug the power leaks. We have to identify what those are in your kid, and then we have to show you how to fix them. We need to then the problem is not all kids are able to move in these ways because certain parts of their neuromuscular coordination are not basically online. They're still awkward little kids, and there's strategies for how to unlock that. We call that muscle activation. We're going to be showing you how to do that. And then we need to know how to map our mishits to find the mechanical issues that even if we're strong, we still have to barrel up the ball. So we have to combine power training and barrel control together into a system so that as we're moving faster, we're also hitting more barrels because if we want to hit for power, we do need to hit it on the barrel. So we're going to be combining all 3 of these things in a very unique way. Now, let's talk about first how to identify the power leaks in your kid's swing. So what are power leaks? So first of all, the body works, a couple of key things about the body. In order to produce as much power, you need to start with your body moving in a sequence of hips first, then shoulders, then arm, then wrists. And if your body doesn't work in this order, then it can't produce as much power as possible. And we can actually track this stuff. So when on a graph, you can see the red line is tracking hip speeds. And we produce the most power when we track these things. When hips speed up first, you can see time is left to right. Speed is up to down. The hips reach their peak speeds first. Then the torso, which is the green, reaches it second. Then the arm, which is third, reaches it third. And then the wrists reach it fourth. And when you produce them in that order, you get more power. So we got to identify like if that's happening in the right order. Then what happens is most kids, because they are awkward, they're still young. If you're talking with a prepubescent kid, or even if you're not, and they have awkwardness, their bodies will choose stability over power. And when that happens, their bodies will start to fire in different orders. And so like this kid on the right, he did fire his hips first, but then he fired his torso third, and then his arms were second, and he actually fired his wrists at the same time as his torso. It wasn't in a sequential order, and so he did not generate nearly as much bat speed as the kid on the left. So there's an order to the power, so we have to get that right. And then from the stability standpoint, it looks a lot like this. So yes, you got to fire in the right order, but if you don't have stability, you can't transfer energy up the chain. You can't take it from the ground and the hips into the torso and the arm and the wrist if there's instability. So kind of like a pyramid where the guys on the right have a stable base. They have a stable second layer, a stable third, and the guy on the top doesn't look like he's falling over. But the guys on the right are like pretty stable on the bottom. But then we got some instability on the second layer, which causes it to be even more unstable in the third layer, and you don't get much stability. So we have to fix both the ability to be faster and stronger and the ability to be more stable in each one of these segments. And that's what really helps kids create power. And that's why Jose Altuve can do what Aaron Judge can do. So now let's go look and show you what the power patterns actually are for the guys like Jose Altuve, and show you how to identify them yourself. So first of all, you want to take some clips of your kid from the side or from behind. And what we're doing is we're going to analyze 4 phases of the swing to identify every one of the potential leaks of power. Make a list of them, what they are. Now, the first one is in the load phase, where the load is when the body moves backwards and into a negative action away from the pitcher, where they're getting their weight into their rear leg. As they are doing that, their belt buckle, their torso, their front shoulder is all rocking down and back towards the catcher. This is like taking a spring and twisting it, and then you'd unlet it go. It would start to fling. All rotational athletes have some sort of counter rotation as they load into the back leg. So this is a good example of that. Now, what you'll often see happen is kids don't do this. They instead preset the load and they just step forward, like this example right here. This girl's belt buckle and her torso do not start to load backwards. She just is striding forward. A lot of the softball community teaches this. They say, oh, you don't want to have a negative load. Yet every professional hitter has a negative load, or like 99% of them, right? And especially the little boppers do. And I really do believe that you want to follow movement patterns of the little guys who hit well, because you might not be 6'7" and have the strength to hit like the big guys do. So I think following little kid patterns or little people patterns and their power patterns is a more effective way for you to get translation into your own training and have it actually show up. So you got to have the load phase where the pelvis, the torso, and the front shoulder are all rocking down towards the catcher. Now, a lot of people say, they'll never be able to catch up the timing when you do that. Watch this guy's leg kick. When his leg is at the peak leg kick, this ball is still in the pitcher's hand. So this is what I tell to everybody. It's like, they'll never catch out high pitching. It's like, no. All of this load happens before the ball is out of the hand, which means this isn't something that has anything to do with how hard the pitcher is throwing, because we get it out of the way before we see the ball. So if you've been taught, don't have a negative load, it takes too long to get to the ball, you're quicker to not load, it's BS and it's killing your power, and you don't want to do it because of this exact example. You're getting it done out of the way. If you try to load while the ball's in the air, yeah, that's a problem, but you want to do it before the ball is out of the air. Okay, next, stride phase of the swing. Second phase. Just show you this clip real quick.
Perkins hits one the
Scroll
other way.
This
is carrying, and it is gone.
Okay, so in the stride phase, this gal, there's no differences in the baseball and softball swing from generating power, by the way. It's from when you start to go forward till the toe touches, okay? And we want to get to what we call a good launch position when we do this. So what we're looking for when the toe touches is the front shoulder is lower than the back shoulder, and the back arm is pulled back so it's level. The hand and the elbow are level with the shoulder, and the knob of the bat, if it had a really bright flashlight, is shining at the catcher. So you want to analyze if your son or daughter is in these positions, and most people aren't in these positions. You can see, though, that it is the position that everybody gets into if, or at least all of these Hall of Fame / all-star players all got to this position when their toe touches. Their front shoulders down. All of their hands are even with their shoulders-ish. The knobs of the bats are all cocked. They're not tipped back. They're all cocked, some more pointing towards the catcher's face mask or their glove. This is the position that all the little guys get into, okay? But when we look at and we assess athletes, what we will see is when we look at when their front toe touches, we will often see the front shoulder higher. This identifies a power leak. We have a position that the body is not going to explode well from. We also see, if we look from behind, we will see commonly a vertical forearm and a flattening out of the bat path that they're then going to push. There's more of a pushy pattern instead of a rotational pattern. And rotating is faster than pushing. And so we want to, all of the elite hitters at high levels are rotating well, and we want to mimic their patterns, okay? So this is what we want to look for in the stride phase. Now, a couple things about the stride phase that'll, I think, a lot of people jack up. So in the, actually, I put this in the load. It's kind of load in the stride. But what you'll see, all of these hitters, look at how their bats tip forward before they go, or their hands will pump down before they go up. In the stride phase, a lot of the best hitters of all time have some sort of action that's going the opposite way that we want them to go right before, and it helps load the body to be better. They will do it with barrel tips. They'll do it with hand pumps. They'll do it with going down, up. They'll have these sorts of patterns, but we'll say things, and coaches will say things like, oh, she's dropping her hands, or, oh, he'll never hit high velocity pitching if you drop your hands like that. Well, okay, fine, but the greatest of all time do it because it helps load the body up. It is a power pattern that is often taught. So I don't necessarily recommend that you teach kid, hey, you got to pump your hands more. What I instead recommend you do is, you'll see in our training, I recommend that you don't coach it out of them. Don't say, hey, don't drop your hands, and force a kid to be unathletic and stuck in a position that maybe their body's not going to be as explosive from as otherwise. Can you imagine being Barry Bonds' coach and telling him to not tip his barrel, or Hank Aaron's coach or Ted Williams' coach and telling him not to tip their barrel or dump their hands before they swung? You might have ruined the greatest hitters of all time. So don't do this power killing coaching tip, okay? Just a quick little example. This is my son again. Notice I've isolated. I have never taught him to tip his barrel this way, but I've never told him that he's doing it or dropping his hands or doing something that I don't want him to do. I've allowed this athleticism, and that's the biggest key, is not coaching it out of them to flourish. And that's why he's able to hit for a high level of power as a freshman hitter that can hit home runs. So don't do it. Don't coach that out of them. The main important thing, if you're going to have some sort of pump like that, is that they get back to this position. If you pump and you stay down, now we have a problem. But if you pump and come back up and you land with your front toe in this position in the stride phase, that is often a real key unlock to getting more power. Now, third phase is the launch phase of the swing. What you want to see in the launch phase, this is now when we're going to go. So this is when the body has to start doing that firing in the right order. And we're looking to see if the hips fire before the torso. And so like Freddie Freeman here, you'll notice his hip is opening as his heel's about to get into the ground, and his hands are still going up. Yet this is not a pattern that we see most kids have. Most kids that are young have hands going down as their front foot is getting down because they don't know how to fire their body in that correct order. So we like to make little graphics like this. You get a shot of your kid from the side and you're watching them, and you say, when their front toe gets down, have their hips started to open before their hands have moved? Or do their hands move before their hips? Or do their hands move at the same time as their hips? If they're moving at the same time or before, they're not getting a stretch of the core before they fire. So all the time, like a boxer would never just hold back into a punching position and wait, right? He rocks first, stretches the core, and then fires. And he does it quickly, but he rocks first. And when we take this rock and a separation of the angles of the shoulder and the hips to create a quick stretch in the core before you fire, it's a power leak. And we have to make sure that we're creating that stretch in order to get as much power. So you want to make sure that's happening. Fourth phase of the swing is the swing phase, where we've actually started to swing. The hands are now moving forward, and we want to look at what the lower body is doing. So really common problems that happen here are if we put a line on the back foot and we watch the swing, what we want to see is the hip is actually pulling the back foot off of the ground of these two hitters. If you notice, their back foot's actually become unweighted, and their front foot is their front leg is straightening into contact as their belt buckle is pointing at the pitcher. This is the powerful pattern. It's almost like their legs are jumping as they turn it into rotation. Yet what we will often see is kids do stuff like leave their back foot on the yellow line, and we will also see them bend their front leg. And if you're bending your front leg, that's like being on a trampoline. You're on a trampoline, you're not bouncing, you're just on there, and someone says, jump when I clap. And they clap, and you start to jump, you push down, and all the energy, because it's a squishy surface, goes down, and it doesn't send you back up. And so when we have bent front legs that are in the act of bending as we are hitting, we are not sending, it is a leak of power that's sending more energy bleeding out of the kinetic chain instead of sending it upwards where our core and our upper body can start to take advantage of it. You will also see when we do this that a lot of hitters think that they are supposed to be pushing off of their back foot to generate power. They're trying to go from back to forward instead of firing their body from their hips and their middle and pulling the body forward. It's a very foreign pattern for a lot of people, and we'll get into how we kind of correct these things here in a second. But you want to identify, are any of these things happening in your kid's swing? And then what we do is we have different drills that will help kids feel what it's like to not do stuff like this, to not bend their front leg, to not leave their foot back like this. And we match drills to flaws. So we create workouts by going through this checklist. We say, okay, you've got these 7 flaws that are leaking power. We're going to target them. We're going to give you 4 or 5 drills, and then we'll take the flaws on the left and we match it 1 drill on the right, and we'll design a practice that has a drill that fixes each of those things. And we do it in a certain way. We use what we call backwards drills. So I think that most hitting is done wrong because we're telling kids what not to do. So I would never go to that girl who's leaving her back foot on the ground and say, don't just leave your back foot on the ground. That's like trying to explain to somebody what chocolate ice cream tastes like, who's never had chocolate because they're allergic to it. And it's like, well, yeah, it's like chocolate ice cream. I've never had chocolate ice cream. Well, what's that like? Oh, it's like cold and it's chocolatey and it's like, I don't know what that, you have to experience chocolate ice cream to know what chocolate ice cream feels like. And these movements that I'm talking about, like 95% of kids, they fail these movements. They do not get all these things right, like almost ever. And so because they don't know how to feel the feeling that we're trying to give them, they don't have the experience of what it's like to straighten the front leg as the pelvis turns. They don't have the experience of what it's like to swing without pushing off the back leg. Like, how would I swing if I can't push off my back leg? So we have to put them in what we call backwards drills to give them this feeling. So as an example of one, you may have seen this video of my daughter doing a very over-exaggerated load. This is not something that we want her to do in a game, but what we're trying to teach her is something for the stride phase of the swing, where we want her upper body going backwards while her lower body is going forward. So we set her up in a completely wrong position. Backwards. We set her up so her chest is forward, her knee is pointing backwards, and we say, okay, now hit the ball. And so naturally, because we've set it up backwards, she has to have her upper body go somewhat back as her lower body goes forward. And this now helps, it forces her to have to experience the movement that we're wanting versus just telling her to pull her hands back more. We put her in a position that gives her the feeling, and all of our drills give feelings that translate to cleaning up these movements instead of telling them what to do and what not to do. And there's obviously a lot to doing this and things that can help athletes navigate this. But that's the basis that I really think helps kids work out better, because it doesn't give them so many thoughts to think about. And instead it gives them feelings, and feelings translate to game, where like 17 thoughts that you have about your swing is not a good thing to carry into a game. So then what we do is we take these drills, okay, and we use what are called overload, underload bats. That's what the pile of bats is sitting here. These are bats that are 20% heavier and 20% lighter than our game bat. And we do all of these drills, giving the kids these backwards feels for the right movements with these heavy bats. We start where we usually work in a 8 or 12 week cycle. And I'm measuring my daughter's speed here. She's a 12U player here. and she's in her off season, and she's got 53.7 miles an hour bat speed. So we will then go through a workout. These overload underload bats, like studies all over the place have shown that they improve how fast you swing. These are like clinical studies. So they've actually charted this stuff and tracked it. These guys saw an 8% increase in bat speed. These guys are 6 and 10 and 8.2. And these are all college athletes that swing overload underload bats, and they're getting like way more bat speed, even though they probably got some pretty good movement patterns because they're in college. So when you use overload, underload, and you use it with youth, and you also clean up their movements, you see incredible changes. So I put my daughter on this program. 8 weeks later, her bat speed went up to 60.6 miles an hour. So we've seen what is that? That's a 6-7 mile an hour increase in what her speed, her bat speed can do. And what I didn't show you earlier when she originally hit this home run is this was done. This hit happened 2 days before that last shot. We just finished an 8-week bat speeds training cycle. She goes and she hits this home run. And what I want you to understand is the ball goes 6 feet further for every mile an hour harder you can swing the bat. So when she adds 7 miles an hour to how hard she can swing, this ball's going 40 to 50 feet further. And this ball, if you look at it again, it's like a pop-up. If she hadn't have just added 40, 50 feet to how far she can hit a ball, she doesn't hit this Grand Slam. This is the first home run she'd ever hit as a 12U player playing in a 14U tournament. And probably most importantly is how tall she is. So look at how tall she is. She crosses home plate. That is the second smallest girl on this entire team, and she's able to hit oppo bombs because we followed this stuff that we're talking about today. I'm 5'10", and so you can see she's obviously not some 6-foot monster. So you can do this stuff. Pretty cool moments when you train this stuff and you see it happen, and like your kid explodes with all this extra power. It's just very, very cool stuff to do. So when you're thinking about this stuff, it's like, okay, well, where should my kid be at actually? So there actually are a couple of charts. I got a baseball and a softball one here. And there's actually, the first thing you want to do is like know if your kid is behind or on schedule with where they need to be. And the main thing we're trying to do is we're trying to get them to have above 60 mile an hour bat speed. Actually at the high school baseball or softball level, the boys have to swing heavier bats and they're bigger human beings. So it's the same, but we want them getting above 60 to play in high school. And that's what we tend to see varsity players have for the boys. And in order to do that, we want them averaging 56 miles an hour bat speed by the time they are 12 years old. And so those are kind of our targets. If you are behind, what I like to say is 12-year-olds should average 56, 11-year-olds should average 50, 10-year-olds should average 45 miles an hour, and 9-year-olds, we say 40 miles an hour, but that's not a huge issue at 9. It's tough to tell with all that uncoordination issues going on. What is sad though, and I want to share this, is this company, Blast Motion, is a great company. They publish all these charts. These are the actual averages, but what I think is disgusting, and big reason why I'm putting this presentation out for you guys today, is these are the averages of high school varsity players, softball girls, are averaging 51 to 61 miles an hour. And why I think that's disgusting is I think that softball coaches do girls a disservice because we don't tell them that they can be as strong as they can actually be. There's no reason that my 5'1", 12-year-old should be able to swing the bat 60 point whatever she was swinging it at 12. And the national average has her at like a top level high school varsity player in the nation. And I'm not saying she's the best, whatever, but just across the board, like that shouldn't be a thing. That's only a thing because you guys aren't training it into your softball players. And I think that's something we can fix. And I want to be a part of fixing that. We should aim for higher numbers. Okay. Now also get a lot of things about a couple of objections when people come up with this. Oh, when we train for power, like shouldn't we train for contact quality first and then power? No, there's a way to train for power in a way that does not hurt your batting average. This is my son's batting average as a freshman. As a 15-year-old on his summer team, he hit 379, OPS of 157. He was second best hitter on the team for his batting average. You do this in combination with the power training, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. They also say, oh, you'll just spin off balls and pull everything. You won't be a complete hitter who can hit it to all fields. This is a spray chart, I should say, of where he hit the ball. You can see he hits the ball all over the field. Yes, he does pull the ball best because it's easiest to pull the ball for a home run. But when you train this right, we actually train oppo power. As you saw my daughter hitting an oppo home run. My son's a lefty. That's why he's hitting these over here. like that needs to be a part of the training, is making sure you're generating it to all fields and generating power in all those fields. So this works for softball, baseball, little leaguers, high schoolers, singles hitters, big kids, small kids, slow pitch softball, position players. It really only works for everyone, guys. It's why little guys can keep up with the big guys and actually be in the same thing. So hopefully you're seeing how this is possible. Okay, next. When we do all those assessments and we look at those power leaks saying, you got all these, it's not as simple as just saying, okay, go do them. What happens is some kids don't have their neural pathways turned on yet in order to like actually do the movements we want them to do. So I like to say it like this. It's kind of like if in middle school, I was getting made fun of by this kid. They're like, hey, can you do the Spock thing, the Trekkie whatever thing where you're pulling your hands apart? And I remember like not being able to physically do this. I was like, I can't move my fingers this way. And the reason I couldn't move my fingers that way is because the muscles in my hand had not been activated. It's a dumb little example, but I remember not being able to do this. And whether you can do this or not, you certainly know somebody who can't. And it's because it's not that they don't have the muscles. They haven't been turned on yet. So what happens is we need to use physical exercise to activate all these different movement patterns. So I got this advice to get my son started with a professional strength coach at the age of 10 or 11. It was right around that same time. And here he is doing this stuff. Now, the reason that we're doing this is I'm not loading a bunch of weight. What we're doing is we are trying to train him to move in a bunch of different movement patterns, because what the research suggests is if you go to PubMed and you go National Library of Medicine and you look for how young is too young to start training, what they've discovered is that if you don't train your kid these 7 movements, by the time they have hit puberty, they end up not being as strong as they potentially could. You literally are like kneecapping your kid if they're not lifting before puberty. Now, lifting does not mean putting 300 pounds on the bar and blowing out your kid's spine and destroying their growth plates. It means paying attention to the movement patterns. So when my son is in here working on this, he's working on pulling the bar up. He's working on a little bit of a hinge. He's working on one of the movement patterns. And what happened is we saw dramatic improvements in his coordination that we realized were a huge piece to why he was able to generate more power, because he started lifting at 10 or 11. That's how strong kids get on the blue line with their neuromuscular potential. Kids that wait till puberty to start lifting, they never catch up. The kids who think it's multi-sport only, they're even worse. It's almost like they didn't do anything, because the multi-sports isn't what's creating the athlete. It's learning the movement quality. So when I talk about movement quality, what we see is, remember what I said earlier, kids choose stability before power. So when we have a kid who's weak and unstable in like a push-up, where he doesn't ever get his elbows behind his back, we see that when he throws, for example, he can't get his elbow behind their back like my 2 kids are, my son and my daughter here in this photo. We'll see kids throw when their arms they start with their arms in front, because they're only strong and stable with their elbows in front of their body. They haven't trained it behind. When we ask kids to do a scap test, and they actually flex their scaps, where you lay on a bench, you imagine the quarters between your spine and you flex. Over half of our kids cannot actively flex their scap muscles behind their shoulder blades when we ask them to. So when we're asking them to hit or to throw and they don't pull back, like I showed you the power leak in the stride phase of the swing, it's because they can't. They don't actually physically know how to flex that muscle. And so we tell them, load, you're not loading. Why aren't you listening? You're uncoachable. No, it's not online. You need exercises that train them to activate those muscles so that they can actually do the movements we want them to do. And there's a bunch of them, and I won't get into all of them, but there's a hinge. This kid's got a knees are way in front of his toes as he squats into this, and his back's rounded. And so when we ask them to field a ground ball, for example, they can't get into this position. Their knees are like this guy's are behind his toes. That other kid would have knees in front of his toes, and his back doesn't know how to be flat. So we can't field ground balls right. We ask them to be stable in a reverse lunge. And when kids aren't stable, like think about hitting. You're on their back leg, then you're on your front leg, and you're violently rotating as hard as you can. If you can't do a single leg lunge without wobbliness, how in the world are you going to be stable enough to violently rotate a bat? And the answer is you can't. And so what we've started to do with my kids since they were 8-10s, we've been doing this 5-6 years, is we add in all of these stability exercises, all of these youth movement patterns to their training, and we see dramatic results. And that's why my kids are in the top rank for how much they can produce power compared to other kids who just focus on hitting. And there's all sorts of patterns. There's the sideways patterns. There's the ability to brace their core. And when I mentioned earlier, like kids will choose stability over power. Like this is a kid who's got a big arch in his back when he's trying to produce power with his upper body. We'll see this show up in phases like this, where this girl's going to arch her back. She's choosing stability as she swings because she doesn't have it in her core. She can't keep her core locked, and she arches her back in a weird, unathletic power position because her body's choosing stability over power. So we got to untrain this. And people don't know this. 95% of kids that I test will fail this pelvic test. So this is a test where we ask them to be on a yoga ball, roll up on one leg and roll up on the other. And can they control it? And they don't have the muscles activated to control the pelvis in multiple directions and be stable. So when we go to the power assessment and we see that they don't move their hips first and we have a power leak, and then they fail this hip flopper test, we know that we need to attack that from multiple different directions. And we know we need to get the pelvis more stable if we want that to happen. And that's what we mean when we say kids need to be lifting before puberty. It's activating these sorts of things. Okay. There's landing on one leg. There's going in multiple directions. All this stuff activates a lot of athletic stuff. A lot of it has to do with the swing. Some of it doesn't. But the main key here that I want to share with you is you want to do all that stuff before they reach puberty. And I don't know where your kid's at, but what looking forward, if your kid's not in puberty, what you're trying to do is that they're perfect form. But right as they hit puberty, girls will get it closer. Girls are closer to 12 years old when this happens. Boys, my son's 14 year. He's 166 pounds. Once puberty hits, then it's time to start adding muscle. And the goal is to add muscle every week. And just as a quick example, if you're not gaining muscle, you need to pay attention to food. So we were feeding my son 3,000 calories a day. He wasn't gaining weight. He didn't gain weight at 35. He didn't gain weight at 4,000. He didn't gain weight at 4,500. It took adding 5,000 calories a day before he started gaining weight. But check this out. This all comes together. We started him with the 1,000-calorie breakfast challenge because he was waking up way too late and heading out to school, choosing sleep over food. And the 1,000-calorie breakfast challenge was 6 eggs, 2 pieces of toast, peanut butter, a glass of chocolate milk. And that started his day at 1,000, kind of started his appetite too. Then he would meal prep 2 other meals. He'd have a 1,000-calorie lunch and a 1,000-calorie second lunch he would eat on the way home. So we would pick him up from school as a freshman in high school, and he would be at 3,000 calories, and then he would eat the remainder throughout the day. And this allowed him to go from 66 pounds, 166 to 187 over the course of about 5-6 months. And he ends up making his high school varsity team, being a solid contributor. They go on and they win state. And he wouldn't have even been on that team if we hadn't have fed him right. This works for boys and for girls. The ball started to go even further with this weight. So I showed you a big hit that he had earlier, but now he's on a field that's 400 feet to center, and he hits it out right center. So, not many 15-year-old kids are hitting for that kind of power, but this didn't happen by accident. We literally grew him like a plant, fed him all the right stuff. Same thing happens for girls. Ladies don't get excited about gaining weight, but if you treat it like, hey, break your dosage. This is, I love this gal's nutritional stuff. Break your dosage from 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight and break that into 3 or 4 meals throughout the day and go with clean stuff. And if you start there and you get the protein in first, it's lean, good protein spaced over each of your meals as you plan those things, you will find that you eat much leaner than if you try to eat too much rice, you just go for what you want. But space that stuff in there. We want you gaining weight every single week. And if you're doing it with lean stuff, you're going to start to see benefits. And that's what we did with my daughter. You can see she's pretty strong, pretty ripped. Hold on. I got a cat in the background. I'm just going to try to take out my light that's lighting my face here, but you can see all this muscle gains. It was super helpful for her. She actually, if you go on HitTrack's national leaderboard, she hit a ball 71.9, 71.8. I can't read it from here. Something like that. As a, 13-year-old player. She went from 12. She turned 13. She did that. And then the ball started really jumping. So watch this hit. So this is a hit. I get a lot of crap. They're like, oh, these aren't 300-foot fences. But these fences this is a men's slow pitch field. If you go look it up, Stevens Field in Olympia, Washington, these are set at 300. They didn't have the tournament 200, whatever fences out. And she hits this ball watch this left fielder. Just way over her head. And so I don't know, this ball's now going 250. I don't actually know, but it went a long, long way. Pretty sure she misses third base right there. So we had a chat about that. But the power just really comes on after puberty if you get the nutrition piece right too. So it just works only every time, guys. Also works for kids. Like this is a 12-year-old. He actually is top 10 in the nation for how hard a 12-year-old can hit. He hits at our facility where we train kids how to do this stuff. So this isn't just like my own unique, genetic line doing this stuff. We train this kid as well. And when you get it all right, it's really cool. You can see he's kind of like a chunkier kid. Right here, and he goes from a kid who can't make a lot of contact. We assess his movements. We in the gym and on those 7 movement patterns and at his power leaks. And he goes on, look at how much leaner he is now. And he hit I don't remember how far he's hit a ball. I think he's hit a ball like 330 feet. He's 12-year-old, and he's not growing a beard, right? He's still a kid. But we produce this stuff all the time. But you're starting to see how you can grow kids differently when you activate the muscles. You get them all ready for puberty. It's a process, guys, that you want to make sure that you're setting your kids up for. So at this point, I'm thinking you're like either thinking, awesome, my kid's already great at making contact. I see how this is like the missing link to help them hit for power. Or you're thinking, this sounds great, but my kid doesn't make enough quality contact for this to actually help them. So whatever you are, the next piece of this is actually mapping your miss hits. So what you want to do is I want to show you how charting your miss hits can help you identify poor swing mechanics that are causing you to have poor barrel control. So there's mechanics that help you move faster, and there's mechanics that help you have more barrel control. And you don't need to train them one or the other. You can do them both at the same time. So kind of give you an idea what we're talking about. What you first want to do is you want to start to just pay attention to what pitches you don't hit well. If you're using software, like you're on a pitching machine that has Rapsodo or HitTrax, that's fine. If you're not, just manually chart it. Watch their games. Watch their BP. Make a little graph and say, where are they not hitting the ball? So in this example, we can see that this kid really smokes the ball when it's down and away from them, but they lose like over 10 miles an hour when the ball is up a little bit, and they can't hit the ball on the inside part of the plate. So what's going on there, right? And so what we do is we map the miss hits to the mechanics. So you want to ask yourselves like things, do they always pop it up? Do you always ground out? Can you only pull the ball? Do you always get jammed? Are you always late? Are you always under it? And then when we find a consistent miss hit, what we do is we have a process for going and looking at what type of mechanics might be causing that miss hit. So just as one example, when we see a kid always popping the ball up and to the left, we often run them through a posture check. Now, there's a couple of other things we run them through too. But what you will see is you want to see the bat should be working 90 degrees to the spine. And so what we have here is we have a kid who is excessively bent sideways, and his barrel is not at 90 degrees. And this often causes balls to go up and to the left. And there's all these little weird tweaks that a lot of people don't know about for all these different mechanical things. And so what really allows us to get good results with hitters is we know exactly what mechanics are causing it, and we have a process for identifying what those issues are that the athlete can clearly see. And so we can identify, okay, this is the problem. Now, the question then is, okay, how do you fix the problem? And then what we recommend that we do is we create feed the flaw training environments for the athlete to experience in, to experiment in, to help them find the solution. So we've got, this is an example of my daughter who was getting jammed on inside pitches, which is a different problem than the guy above. But a good example that we have for the environment is I don't tell her what to do. Instead, she was casting her hands and her barrel was getting exposed. And so I just simply created an environment where she could not cast her hands. She could not do the flaw. If she tried to do the flaw, she would get exposed by whacking this pool noodle. It's embarrassing. Everyone watching sees it. And then I just say, hey, just try to hit the ball, and I'll tell her where I want her to try to hit the ball. And it's different depending on what drill or flaw we're feeding. But then she's got to experiment with, how do I have to do this to actually hit the ball? And she'll fail, and then she'll succeed once. And what happens is when they succeed, that's them discovering a feeling. And so I'll be like, what did you feel? And they'll be like, oh, I had to feel this. Great. Now go do that. That's giving the kid the chocolate ice cream experience instead of telling them what chocolate ice cream tastes like. So when they go into the game, my daughter here gets an inside pitch and she hits it out. Because they're able to take the game's, the feelings into the game, and they aren't coming in with 13 things to think about that all the coaches are doing. And they're not yelling at mom or dad or hearing mom and dad yell at them to stop dropping their hands or stop whatever, right? 100,000 different examples of what what people do. But these are allowing us to translate these things into games. So I know that's a lot of info, guys, but I just real quickly want to ask you a quick question. I've been talking fast. Anybody out there feeling a little bit like this, where it's like, oh boy, that's a lot to drink out of the fire hose? I can't digest this information this quickly. If you happen to be thinking about that, quick question for you. I am looking to help a couple of people go through this process where we identify the power leaks, we map your mishits, we put together a specific plan that can help you do all this stuff. We watch you try to do the things. We notice where the instability is in your kids' movement patterns. We give you the corrective exercises to help train those things, whether they're pre-puberty or post-puberty, and put together like a complete program to help you like install this into your lives. I don't think that it's something that other hitting coaches out there do. There are some hitting coaches that they kind of help you hit the ball a little bit better. But I don't like this stuff is missing. They don't do the power development from my experience. And I think that this needs to be something that, that more kids get help with doing so they can actually reach their full potential. So if you would like some help from me in getting this installed, I'd like you to click the link below. I have an application where I am going to be doing assessments for a handful of people to help them identify the power leaks and the mishits in their swing. And if that's something that you would like me to do for you and possibly move forward after those assessments and have me help you actually train and set up your training environments and programs to like actually put this into a practice plan for you that will get results, then go ahead and click the link below this page that will take you to an application form where you can fill that out. Make sure you're a good fit. Like you got to have a couple of things if it's going to end up working out, but you can also submit some footage and I will assess your son or daughter's swing for all the things we've talked about here today for free. So that's something that I'd like to offer you guys as some extra value to make sure that you get what you need to go forth and prosper. So if that sounds like something you would like my help in doing, click the link below, fill out that application, guys. It is free. And I'll look forward to chatting with you on the phone and helping you show some opportunities and missed opportunities for how to take your kids' game to the next level. So that's all for today. Click the link, fill out that assessment if that's something you'd like help with. And I look forward to seeing you guys out on the diamond, hopefully crushing some balls. We'll see you guys.